Hi, my name is Ragnar and I welcome you to a new episode of Horror Trip. Do you know one person who has never heard of vampires? I highly doubt it, because the vampire is the epitome of modern mythology. It doesn't matter how old you are or what's your favorite form of media entertainment, if it's from movies or TV shows, horror, action movies, thrillers, comedy, hell, even porn. Or if it's video games, role-playing games, literature. Or even if you avoid all of that completely, you will inevitably come across the vampire at some point in your life. Vampire movies were blockbusters in the 1920s, and they are today. And they pretty much were box office hits at any point in between. Just like with novels, from cheesy high school romances and penny dreadfuls to historically inspired epics, you'll pretty much find vampires in every literary subgenre there is. You could probably just write a book about an interview with a vampire. Oh, well. Ever since Bram Stoker published his epistolary novel about the Transylvanian Count Dracula, people are intrigued, fascinated, and even obsessed with those powerful, immortal creatures of the night. Because with Bram Stoker, that's where it all started. Right? Now, although it was the first major breakthrough that popularized vampire fiction in modern audiences, the character of Dracula was actually based on the Romanian count and warlord Vlad Țepeș III, who became infamous among his enemies, the Ottoman Empire, during their invasion of Europe in the 15th century and the local population alike, for his ruthless brutality and merciless cunning as a strategist on the battlefield. The name Țepeș means the Impaler, a nickname he earned through his charming habit of impaling his prisoners of war on 6 feet long wooden poles and leaving them to a slow and agonizing death. And of course, in a time where news were still being delivered through word of mouth and gossip, dark and sinister rumors began to spread about him, until it became common knowledge that Vlad Țepeș had lost his humanity and turned into an undead demon cursed to never see the sunlight again and feast on the blood of the living. But this lore didn't just form out of nowhere. The vampire was already established folklore all around Eastern Europe at that time. People were so afraid of vampires that staking and beheading was a common practice for funerals in these regions for centuries. I mean, you really want to make sure that your mother-in-law wouldn't come back out of her grave to suck the life out of you. Again. So it's Transylvania then, Eastern Europe during the late Middle Ages, where the vampire myth was born. Well, yes and no. Modern age vampire fiction, with all the tropes we've come to learn over the decades, the sleeping in coffins, their slight oversensitivity to sunlight, wooden stakes and beheadings, their allergy to garlic, holy water, crucifixes and silver. Or wait, was silver a vampire thing?
That's werewolves.
Werewolves, yeah, werewolves. All of these tropes directly derive from Transylvanian vampire folklore, but what's really fascinating is that you can find astonishingly similar vampire myths in pretty much every culture all across human history. In Greek mythology, for example, Lamia, daughter of Hellas and lover of Zeus, was caught in flagranti by Hera, Zeus's wife, and because she didn't really like that, she simply killed all of Lamia's offspring out of revenge. Lamia, of course, swore revenge, and then turned into an undead witch who would prey on children in their beds at night and drink their blood. Ancient Sanskrit folklore tells of the Vitalas, ghoulish undead creatures who would rest at night hanging from trees on cemeteries like bats, and of course also drink the blood of the living. Hebrew traditions tell tales of the Aluka, or the Motets Dam, meaning bloodsucker. The Loup-garou is a vampire myth that originated from French and African voodoo beliefs in the culture of Mauritius and the Caribbean, while ancient Chinese lore tells of the Jiangshi, restless and hopping corpses with long fingernails and fangs that were brought back to life by sorcery. And that is really just a small selection of surprisingly similar vampire myths that have developed in totally different cultures all over the world with no historically recorded cultural contact whatsoever. So is that an extremely coincidental case of parallel development? Or do vampires maybe appeal to some form of common denominator in our subconscious? Pretty much every religious denomination, philosophy, or belief system ponders with the question of mortality and tries to deliver answers, ideas of the afterlife, or offer some form of closure. The vampire symbolizes defiance over the very concept of mortality. They have to die in order to become undead and never have to worry about the one inexorable thing for every living being: death. But their blessing comes with a curse so bittersweet that it makes Aristotle's famous studies on tragedy read like an instruction manual for vampire stories. Because aside from never being able to see the sunlight again, the vampire has to kill human beings out of an existential need. Something regarded as despicable in every society in the world is their daily bread. And because of that, they're cast out, isolated from society by nature. And being cast out from society because you're different, that's just something a lot of people can relate to. Add to that the erotic implications, the dominant submissive relationship of a predator out for the life essence of its prey, and thinking of that in a time when homosexuality was as disdained as, well, I can't think of any good example because I don't think there was anything as scorned by society as homosexuality back then. The vampire was a very convenient way for a writer to slip homoerotic innuendos into their narrative. But more than all of that, I believe that the real fascination lies in the fact that the vampire's curse makes us really think about the implications that come with immortality, something most of us would instinctively embrace out of our natural sense of self-preservation. But these stories can make us really think about what it means to be forever young. To live so long that you will inevitably see every person you hold dear in your life die. It reminds us of the bitter truth that finding a person you truly love and that you want to spend the rest of your life with comes with a promise of torment, of seeing that person pass away eventually, or of putting them through that pain in case we should die first. The vampire will never be freed from that curse because no matter how often they repeat that cycle, it never ends, making time and life itself virtually meaningless. And I really believe that herein lies the crux, because through these stories we can learn how valuable the time we are given actually is, because it is finite. So what about you? If a vampire would approach you and gave you a
choice I never had,
would you consider it? Tell me what you think in the comments section. Thank you so much for watching Horror Trip, a bloody disgusting show. If you want to see more videos that I've done, then please check out my channel RagnarRox on YouTube. You will find videos about horror games and shows, commentaries, and video game design analysis there. My name is Ragnar, and I'll see you next time on Horror Trip.